Hi, you're listening to Service from Hell, a podcast featuring people that are currently in customer service positions or the lucky few that got out and all of the good, bad, and infinitely irritating things that go along with that work. I'm actor and writer Kate Gaffney, and I'm uniquely qualified to discuss this as I used to work at a very busy and very popular comedy club in Los Angeles, and at least one of you listening right now has probably grabbed me and told me you were ready to order when I was running around like a crazy person. So let's eat! I'd like to welcome our guest comedian and actor based out of LA, Seth Shapiro. Seth has performed in comedy clubs all over the country. Originally hailing from Chicago, what up Chicago, Seth has an extensive background in sketch and I swear I've done this before. Sketch and improvisational comedy, having studied and performed at the Second City and the Groundlings. He currently lives in SoCal with his wife and 1-year-old son, along with a pit bull and a cat who are constantly competing to be the most obese animals in the house. I better know Seth from meeting him right now in this moment with y'all. We also tried to schedule this interview since June of this year, and we both thought we ghosted one another. It was it's such a symbol for my whole dating life and ever trying to talk to men, except the stakes were way higher because it was for the show. So I'm so glad this finally happened. So Seth, tell us, what got you into comedy? What's your comedy style? Do you like LA? Tell us all the things.
Oh man, let's see. Do I like LA? Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
I do a lot of touring for comedy, and I have to say, like, the one through line when touring is that people are really nice in other towns, but the other through line is I think they have to be because there's nothing else happening in that town. So it's like I guess they must feel like they're all in this together. So I always do appreciate coming back. I never appreciate LA more than when I come back to LA from the road. I do. I love that there's so much to do here. I'm definitely a big foodie, and so just the melting pot of cuisine out here is, I think it might be just really unprecedented in the world. Like, LA's usually ranked somewhere with the food just overall, but as far as variety, I think it's got to be number one, and just things to do out here. I love it. Love the weather. Yeah, it is. It's really nice. Let's see. What got me into comedy? I moved out here 19 years ago. I graduated from University of Illinois. I studied acting. I moved out here with a buddy of mine who is actually probably a bit more famous than I am. His name's Jonathan Kite. He was Oleg on Two Broke Girls. He was most recently on the sitcom with Jamie Foxx last year that was on Netflix. And he's my best friend. He was my best man at my wedding. And so we moved out here together 19 years ago. We were roommates for a few years. And then we moved out to the Valley. I wanted to stay there for a couple more years in Studio City because it was really nice. And he wanted to kind of be more about it in Hollywood. So, we split up in that fashion, but we're still like absolute best friends. And I actually open for him on the road a lot now too. Yeah, I'm his official feature, which is really fun, getting to go on the road with my best buddy and, writing comedy and performing together. And so, yeah, we always were cast as like the two comedic guys, because I was always the short, stocky guy, and he's like a tall, skinny guy. And so we had planned to come out to LA like probably by the end of our freshman year. That was the plan. Moved out here with a third friend, actually. And so I'd been mostly doing acting. That's why I came to LA. But I'd always loved stand-up, always been a big fan of it. And I had done it when I was, I did a bit of it in college, a little bit of it. But then I kind of stayed away from it for a long time out here. I did a lot of sketch. I did a lot of improv, including, probably our biggest claim to fame out here was that we formed a group called L. Ron Jeremy that performed at a competitive improv show that they used to have at IO West called the Cage Match.
I've done the Cage Match.
And at the time, we actually ended up setting the all-time record. We won for 52 straight weeks and then retired undefeated after a year.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so that was really fun. There were 6 of us in the group. And then, probably a couple years after that, back in 2014, I think it was 2014, a friend of mine who he worked at the Comedy Store, and we were hanging out there one night, and he was like, "Hey man, you're going to be," I think he always thought that I was a stand-up. Like, I don't think he realized that I really just did sketch and improv when it came to comedy. And he's like, "Hey man, you going to get up tonight or something?" I'm like, "What? No, I didn't. What are you talking about?" He's like, "Look man, you should come. Why don't you come on Monday when the open mic is, and I'll get you on stage." And at the Comedy Store, and I was like, "Oh, that," because it's supposed to be random, right? The potluck. And I was like, "No, man, that's not fair." He's like, "Dude, the whole thing's rigged anyway. Like, we always decide who goes up." So I spent all weekend prepping 3 minutes, and then Monday rolls around, and that Monday is the day that Robin Williams committed suicide. and so like I was like so like revved up to do stand up, and like that's his home club too, you know. And I don't know, I was just like, oh, I can't start my stand up comedy career today. And my wife gave me this like rousing speech. She's like, no, the world needs to laugh today. You need to get, like, assuming that I was like gonna actually do well at this open mic at Comedy Store. And I was like, yeah, the world needs to laugh. That's right. So I stuck with it, and I that was my first night of stand-up. Was the day Robin Williams died. And it was a weird vibe that night at the Comedy Store, as you can imagine. It was just a really, really weird vibe. But anyway, I love it, and it kind of started taking off somewhat quickly, and my stand-up or my acting career had been a little stagnant lately. So I was like, you know what? Let's maybe just kind of go down this path and see if there's something here. And so that was 8 years ago. Yeah.
Wow. We're going to have you back on, because we've had a couple comics on who have had the potluck experience from hell, and have talked about just, it was the worst. And so you having like a somewhat positive experience feels like you were sort of meant to be on that trajectory of like,
I mean, open mics are,
brutal.
They are what they are. Whenever I have a friend who like does a stand-up comedy class and they have a final performance, and it goes great because everyone there is friends and family, and they're all supportive, and they're like, oh, I want to try doing stand-up, can I come with you to open mics? And I always say to them like, yes, but you must lower your bar of expectations below the ground. And then they come and get absolutely no laughs, and no one's watching or paying attention to them, and then it kind of scares them off stand-up. But that's the thing. Like, you're not there to like get laughs and crush. It's an open mic. It's just a gym.
So, okay. So would you, how do you gauge, I guess, because the open mic is what formulates the joke in theory, or doing the reps. How do you gauge what actually works then?
By doing it a gazillion times in front of a gazillion different types of crowds. I mean, for me, like I'm trying to do as many booked shows as I can around town, to minimize the number of mics that I have to go to. Sure. And so, because you get so much more feedback when you're in front of people that are actually paying attention and want to be there.
1,000%.
Yeah.
And so I know I don't want to hyper focus on this, but I do want to know. So acting was what you came out here to do. Where can people see you then? Do you have like old clips of things up, or are there other shows we can see you on, or how do we?
No, not too much. I mean, when it was all said and done, I booked a few small projects. I did a handful of commercials that maybe they're out there in the ether.
Okay.
Yeah.
So comedy is the lane that you are kind of exclusively in now.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, okay. I mean, the ultimate goal would be to try to be able to craft some kind of career that I can mainly stick around in LA to do, so that I can spend as much time with my wife and kid as possible. So I've been starting to do more writing, especially because it's interesting. A lot of friends have pointed out to me that they think that I'm a writer's comic more than anything, and I've always been a writer. I did a ton of writing as a kid, and so that's a lane that people have always suggested to me, and I've never really taken it seriously before, but now may be the time.
What does a writer's comic mean for the lay people that don't speak the language?
I'm trying to think of like maybe good examples. Well, I guess when the comedy is coming more from the humor within the material instead of the performance.
That's fair.
I'd like to think that this wasn't my friend's passive-aggressive way of telling me I'm not a good performer. They're like, yeah, you're more a writer. Yeah, it's like
you have a face for radio.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, but I think that my stand-up tends to be a little heady and weird and goofy, and because I think I've done a lot of sketch and improv in my life, that I think a lot of the material that I write comes from that place of interesting, funny concepps.
Okay. Fans of the show, former guest of the show, Chris Regan, is a writer's comic. So that was what he was told sort of early on in his career too. And now he's an Emmy-winning writer for Family Guy. So, there is a path that leads to success that way. So it's not all bad. Okay, well, because we have limited time, I want to get to the goods. So real quick though, what is your comedy style? If people are listening to you, are you storytelling? Are you doing observational? Is it a hybrid? Or do you not necessarily have one style?
I kind of do all of it.
I
do storytelling. I do characters. I do one-liners.
Great.
I like to do bits where I kind of mess with the crowd.
You do. So you do crowd work.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun. Okay. At the end, we'll take, you can tell everybody your socials and where you're going to perform and how they can see you, especially because you're touring. So if they're all over the country, that's great. Okay, folks, we hope you enjoyed your apps. We're going to go on to the entrees after a quick break. We are back, and now it's time for the entrees. Okay, so Seth, I know you're a long-standing fan of the show, so you already know all of this, but I'm just telling you for your edification. This is the question bit. So I always call it the speed round of questions, but it's not. Feel free to tell all the stories because this is the part that everyone loves. And I did not explain where your job for a long time that I want to hear all about because I have 1,000 questions. But we're going to start at the top. What was your first job ever where the government was taking taxes out of your money? So not like a paper route. I mean, you could say that, but like, did you have a paycheck job as your first job?
Let's see. When I was, I think, 16 years old, I got in Chicago, I got a job at some local doctor's office just doing paperwork.
Did you have to deal with client or with patients?
No. It was really just like a lot of filing, that kind of stuff.
Okay. What was your first customer service job?
First customer service job would be the, probably that would have been when I was 20 years old. I worked at Little Caesars for a month. Yeah. I went to go stay in Vegas with my dad for the summer. That's actually originally where I'm from before Chicago. I was born in Vegas.
Oh, okay.
And my dad still lives there. So I was spending the summer with him. Needed a job, got a job at Little Caesars. And I was also there because Second City had just opened a branch there. And so I wanted to take classes there as well.
So did you take classes at Second City Vegas?
I did, yeah.
I didn't even know they had a school there. I knew they had a theater, but I didn't know they had a school.
I think now they
don't have anything there.
Now they don't have anything. Now it's done. But yeah, that's where Jason Sudeikis was there.
Get out.
Yeah.
Do you know Kevin McGeehan or Ithamar Enriquez? They did stuff in Vegas.
No.
Okay. No. We don't have to do your Rolodex. Sorry.
Yeah,
okay, so Little Caesars for a month in Vegas.
For a month in Vegas, and I was taking Second City classes, and there was this one thing at night that I was wanting to go to, and but I had I was scheduled to work, and so I went to the boss and I was like, hey, I need to get off this night, and the boss is like, sorry, you're scheduled for it. You can't get off for it, and I was so green that I was just like, oh, I guess I gotta quit then. I quit then because I have to go to this thing. And he was like, you're quitting right now? I was like, well, yeah. I mean, at the end of the shift today. And he's like, oh, okay, then you're fired. And I was like, no, I quit. He goes, no, you're fired because you have to put in 2 weeks notice, which was like at 20 years old, it was the first time I'd ever heard that. So
yeah.
I'm like, oh, shoot. Okay, I guess I'm fired. But amazingly, like a week later, I ended up getting a job at the, what's it called? Grand Slam Canyon, the Adventure Dome, which is the pink dome indoor amusement park that's connected to Circus.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, these people that worked at Second City, they offered me this job for like $20 an hour, which was like $1 million an hour when you're 20, doing carnival barking at this virtual reality experience where people are like sitting there with a helmet on, and it was like a pirate adventure that they're watching inside, and there's an actor in a booth behind them that has like a camera on them, and they're sort of dressed like a pirate, and they're narrating this adventure and getting the audience to do ridiculous things. And so I was a carnival barker just there to help sell tickets out front and try to get people to do it. But the real advertisement was watching these people in the seats, pretending to sword fight and drink rum and do all sorts of things that the pirate actor behind the scenes was just telling them to do, because they know as people walk by, they're going to be like, what are these people doing? This looks like a lot of fun. They must be really in it. It must be like the Matrix, like they're within a virtual world. And then they stick a helmet on, and it's, year 2001 era virtual reality special effects. And
wow.
So every group was just there to try to dupe the next group into doing this attraction.
That's awesome.
So I was the carnival barker, and then after a few weeks, I moved my way up to being the pirate.
Oh, get out.
Yeah. So,
after a few weeks.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know, right?
Damn. Okay. So how long were you so you were doing that simultaneously whilst taking classes at Second City?
Yeah.
So how long were you able to do that?
That was just for the summer.
Just the summer.
Yeah.
And then you went back to Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did you get a customer service job in Chicago after that?
No, I had a couple more years of college and then moved out to LA. And then actually for a while in LA, my main, it's always weird to call this my occupation, but one of the main ways that I made extra money was I played poker.
Get
pay
out.
the bills. Yeah, I still do that a little bit to supplement my income, but that was kind of my main thing for a while, and I always sort of considered that. I was like, well, I'm doing this so that I don't have to get a serving job, and it freed me up to, do my acting and take classes and do everything else. I did have another job when I first moved to LA for about a year, where I actually worked at a casino in LA at this really odd job that, like, I don't even want to get bogged in the details, but essentially casinos in LA work differently than in other areas where the house can't play against the players. So they provide the game, kind of like in poker, where like they provide the dealer, but they're not playing against the players. They just take a piece of the pot, and that's how they get paid. But for a long time, players were wanting to have Vegas style games like blackjack, where the house does play against them. So they found a way to create a game where players take turns being the dealer, and the casino has a dealer work, but they actually just take $1 per person as a service fee, and it's like risk free. So they're just making an absolute ton of money every hand. But I worked for a third party company that sort of made sure that all the bets were paid off. I know it's really weird. I don't even want to get into it. Your face says it all right.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure.
Accurate.
Okay,
yeah,
so
it's a very appropriate face for what I'm describing right now.
Were you the dealer then in that?
I was not the dealer. I worked for another company that essentially represented like a very rich player that would sit at the table and make sure that all of the players who were the players at the moment got paid if they won. So the players would take turns being the quote unquote the bank and banking against the rest of the table. But if they didn't have enough money to put up to cover all of the players' bets, we covered the action behind it.
So if you cover the action behind it, does that mean you take a bigger piece of the pot once that hand is over?
Well, it means essentially that we're getting to act as if we're the house all day long, because the game itself, there's an edge for whoever the house is. So, and then we would get an hourly wage to help run the game.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I have to go back though. So you, in order to, because a former guest of the show,
I can't tell if this is interesting at all.
No, it's fascinating.
Really
No, because a former guest of the show, John Williams, supplemented his income partially out here with poker. And I was like, there's no way anyone else does that. But this is fascinating to me that this was a thing. So when you got here, were you like, I know I'm good enough at, because poker is a skill. So you're thinking, I'm good enough at this and I don't want to become a server. So I want a job where I decide my hours. So you just roll up to a casino?
I was not yet a winning player. That was at the time where I was like cutting my teeth at the cash games here in LA, at the casinos here, and also playing a lot online. And then after working this job for a year, I was starting to make more playing poker just as a hobby than I was at this job. And the job was kind of killing me because I was working the graveyard shift, which originally when I took the job, I'm like, oh, this will be great.
Yeah.
I'll have my days to audition, but it really just kind of turned me into a living zombie.
Yep. That's happened. Yeah.
I think I put on like 40 pounds in that year.
Isn't it so weird? I put on so much weight when I worked at a comedy club, like being up until 5 a.m. and like rolling out of bed at 1 p.m. It does something to you.
And like one of the perks of the job is that they give us a meal that we can eat sometime during our shift. So I was essentially eating one humongous meal
in the middle of the night
at 1 a.m. every day.
Yeah.
And then just sitting there at a table for 8 hours. It was, not very healthy.
So you're through this job, you're observing that you're getting better at poker just because you're watching people play it or you're representing a business and you're playing too.
I'm playing a lot outside of the job because I was running games like blackjack and pie gow.
Okay.
But then when I was done with my shift, I would go play poker there, or I would go home and I'd play online.
Okay, so you sign up for that. How long are you doing that where you're doing graveyard? Well, that was a year?
That was a little over a year, like year and a few months.
Were you then simultaneously auditioning?
Yeah, I was auditioning.
How?
I don't know. But I mean, I got really lucky. I took a class at the Groundlings when I first came to LA, and through that, I ended up getting an agent. And so I started auditioning pretty quickly when I came out here and was booking the occasional thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. It was really great.
Okay, so you do that for a little bit over a year, and then how many customer service jobs would you say you've had total?
Like 4.
Okay.
5.
So do you count that the gambling and that kind of thing?
I guess that's I guess that is a customer service job, and the casino culture is like a really, really odd culture.
Ooh, what do you mean?
Well, it's great because it's also like a melting pot. Like, I mean, there aren't that many white people that are playing these specific types of games, especially because there are a lot of like typically Asian games like Pai Gow and Pan 9.
I didn't know that.
And the culture of it is a very Asian gambling culture where a big part of it is people like to bet on each other's seats. And so at each seat where there's like a circle where you place the dollar for the casino to take for their payment, there are actually 6 little circles because people like to make bets on other people's seats. And so and even players that aren't even at the table. So every table has like 20 people gathered around it, only 6 of which have seats. And the other people, it's like one of those old movies where like you're watching the underground, cockfight.
Yeah.
And people like just waving bills in the air. So people would throw chips on other people's seats and be like, I want to bet $50 on that seat.
I'm saying that seat will win.
Yeah. And for every bet that was made, those people would have to give $1 to the casino. So the casino is just making an insane amount of money.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, risk free. And the real kick in the teeth of it is that if a player who just not even sitting in your seat makes a larger bet than you're making for yourself on the seat, they actually get to make the decision on the hand.
Meaning what? I don't.
Like if they're playing blackjack, they get to decide whether you hit or stay or split or double down or
because
whatever.
They've essentially bet for you because they put more money down.
Because they're making a bigger bet, so the biggest bet gets to make the decision.
Damn.
So you could be sitting there playing, and someone could come over, make a larger bet on your seat, and get to decide what happens.
But then if you end up winning, do you get to keep?
Win.
You still do.
You still win whatever you bet.
This is crazy to me.
Yeah, so it's its own culture, and there was a lot of cheating that was attempted. And so actually when we were training for the job, like half the training was learning how to spot different types of scams that people pull.
Ooh, tell me.
Man, I'm trying to think. Well, there's a lot with card marking. In a lot of the games, aces are very important cards. In both Pai Gow and blackjack, just off the top of my head. And so a lot of people try to mark the cards by either with their fingernail kind of marking it, or the more like Ocean's 11 high tech is they would put like an invisible ink on it and be wearing sunglasses so they could see it, because if you know where the ace is going to be, that would give you a huge advantage in the hand. And they would try to manipulate the way that the hands are quote unquote randomly determined on which seats to be put on there's like a dice shaker. And so they would try to manipulate what numbers would come up on the dice to try to get those cards on a certain seat.
Get out of here.
They would also take the cards off the table, and while they're trying to figure out what to do with their hand, they would like sneak cards in, or they would sneak cards with other players. Yeah.
So you were trained how to see that. So did you ever catch it and have to squash it?
Oh yeah, for sure.
What would you do?
I'd call the floor man over. It would first come with a warning. I'd be like, hey, floor, can you please let this person know, please keep the cards over the table,
because they'd like hold them to their chest and you're like, I know something's happening.
Like essentially, if everyone adheres to there are a lot of rules there, and if you adhere to the rules, they're there to thwart people being able to gain an advantage like that. But the thing is, our company, this third-party company that worked there, we had a contract with the casino to be there no matter what, but the players could go wherever they want. So whenever there was a dispute of any kind, almost always the floor people would side with the customers to keep them happy. And a lot of the floor people were in on it too. The entire thing is super crooked.
Wait, the floor people be in on it?
Yeah, like they know that if they let these guys cheat, and then they'll give them a little bit, outside. I'm telling you, there was like so much corruption going on there.
Wait, how did you not become bitter? Because then, especially because you were also playing in your free time, wouldn't you think I'm playing against cheaters? I guess
I wasn't too bitter because it wasn't my money. It was my company's money.
Sure.
I mean, but I still wanted to do my job well, because if a group of players pulled off some kind of scam and took a lot of our company's money on my watch, I could have gotten fired.
Yeah.
So it definitely did behoove me to try to keep an eagle eye on them. Yeah.
This is a world I have no frame of reference for.
And I had no idea until I moved out here, and I was talking to a friend where I was like, yeah, I'm looking for a job, not sure what to do. I'm really good at games and at gambling games. And someone's like, oh yeah, I have a friend out here who they play blackjack for a living, sort of, but they work for a company. And so they ended up putting me in touch with this company. It's like, yeah, who would have thought that something like this ever existed?
Well, it's kind of what you were saying before about how LA has such a strong food culture. LA also has the most massive, weird culture of jobs you didn't think could be jobs becoming a job that you make a ton of money on, that you're wait, you do what? It's such God bless, necessity is mother of invention, and it's expensive out here. So I get it. Okay. So you said 4 customer service jobs total of all of the jobs you've had, which is your favorite. Comedy, I genuinely think comedy is customer service, but also you don't get to use that as the answer for your favorite, because obviously it's your favorite.
Yeah.
So
it's you're an artist, but you're babysitting drunks too.
1,000%.
That's the job.
1,000%. And you're trying to stay funny and on your game whilst you're crowd managing. It's insane.
Yeah.
God bless. So what was your favorite of all of the customer service jobs you've had?
Favorite? Oh man. So in 2011, there was in 2011, there was a this big thing where there was essentially a kibosh put on the entire online poker industry. Without getting into too many of the details of it, essentially the government suddenly cracked down on online poker and everybody's funds were seized.
Are you shitting
like
me?
worldwide billions of dollars. Yeah, it was a crazy thing.
Just seized? Can they do that?
So no, they can. And eventually they ended up unfreezing the funds, but a couple of the websites didn't have them anymore. Like they're supposed to keep them in reserves, like how a bank has to keep a certain percentage. A casino actually needs to keep 100% of what it represents. And these websites are like, oh, we don't actually have it. So, oh well. And now those sites are defunct completely.
Well, did people go after them? Like, yo, you took 100,000 of my US dollars?
A lot of the websites are based in, in insert random third world country here. And, who knows how to get there. So, or where they're based. Like, who knows? It's like trying to go after those scamming, those telephone, that are all based in in India or wherever.
Oh.
And it's like, who knows how to get them? It's like, there's one guy who's a computer tech who knows how to get those people. And that's,
you have to go on a podcast about crime. This is fascinating. I want to ask you so many CIA questions.
And it was on tax day of all days. It was on April 15th, 2011. So overnight I lost pretty much all the money to my name and my means of making money.
Are you joking? Wait, they took your money too. Did you ever get that money back?
No, I never, because mine was with one of the sites that didn't.
Seth, are you so bitter?
So, it happened to a lot of people, and I'm feeling very blessed, and I'm okay now. And
you're too positive. All right, fine. But that happened
at that time, and so I was like, oh my god, I need a job. And so at that time, I ended up getting a few customer service jobs
simultaneously.
I ended up getting a job at the Cheesecake Factory. I got a job catering at this really nice, this high-end catering company. And then a friend of mine who ran karaoke out here offered me one night a week at this to run karaoke for his business. So I don't know. Every one of those jobs had kind of its fun, weird, quirky things and a lot of things that I didn't like about each job. So I don't know which I liked the most. Maybe the catering one, because at least we got to kind of be a part of some interesting, unusual events, like celebrity weddings and celebrity kids' bar mitzvahs and things like that. So,
can you say a celebrity wedding you catered?
Let's see. One of the Lakers.
Oh, that's cool.
I remember that. Who was it, man?
Kobe.
It was like Shannon Brown. Was that his name? It was like one of the bench players. But yeah, Kobe was there.
Oh wow.
All the Lakers were there, which is kind of fun. That was back in 2011 when I first started. Yeah.
Okay, and you said each job had something you didn't like about it. What was the thing you didn't like? Like, what was the quirky, weird shit for each of those jobs that you're like,
Let's
mother?
see. So with the catering was a lot of on-the-job training. I mean, the first day I showed up, I had no idea what I was doing. I wasn't yet working at Cheesecake, so I didn't have any service experience in that fashion. And it was just like kind of jumping on a running train. And it's like a lot of just manual labor with like setting up and taking down. And during the event itself, you're doing all this manual labor, but you still have to have this like air
Smile.
of, yeah, exactly.
Can't be sweating.
So that was kind of tough and kind of not knowing at each event what it was going to entail. I got hired at one event for a guacamole competition, which was out there in Carpinteria? Carpinteria.
Yeah, that's up by Santa Barbara.
Right. And so I got out there, didn't know what I was going to do, and I had just recently gotten my bartending license.
Okay.
But I hadn't yet done any bartending like in the real world, but I get up there and the person running the event was like, so you have your bartending license, right? I'm like, well, yeah, I recently got it. And they're like, okay, you're going to be the bartender tonight, which to be put on this event, which meant having to make hundreds and hundreds of margaritas throughout the night.
Pure margaritas all night.
Yeah, just pure margaritas. And like, I had never set up a bar before on my own. I hadn't kept up with it. I didn't know how to work the blender. And of course, everyone wanted a blended one because it was like a super hot day.
Of course.
But I ended up making some like bomb ass margaritas all day long.
Did you?
It was like a big hit of it. Yeah, including who was there? Oh, Alan Thicke showed up, and he had a toothpick in his mouth the entire time, and he kept being like, "This is a great margarita. I don't know what you did with this, but this is really good."
You sound like him.
Yeah. He has a very swallowy kind of.
Yeah,
Oh
he
no,
does.
no, like,
Yeah.
So that was a pretty hairy experience.
Wait, it was a guacamole competition though? What the fuck does that mean?
It was
Couldn't
a
tell me.
national guacamole competition, so all the finalists were at this place.
What I would pay to go there right now.
Sounds amazing.
It's amazing.
So a bunch of rich muckety mucks get together to judge other people's guacamole.
So that you didn't like that you were just like, it was OTJ. It was like, you better get out here and sort it out.
Yeah,
There's
too
much pressure.
Yeah, I never liked not knowing what was going to happen, and for how long we were going to be there. Like, I mean,
so brutal.
The money was kind of good when you got into that OT territory
Yeah.
and then double OT, but there were some events there. You were there for like 20 hours.
Come
Yeah,
on.
it was crazy. And we weren't allowed to have our cell phones on us at all. So my wife was always like very worried about where I was.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you're doing that. So that's the one you don't. That's what you didn't like about catering. What was quirky and weird about being were you the karaoke host?
Yeah. I was the KJ. And
Ooh.
it was, I don't want to mention the bar because I don't want to put them down, but it was like a very deep valley bar.
Okay, got it.
And they had a great venue for music. They had like this huge stage area and then a separate bar area. And karaoke in LA is pretty great. Like,
yes.
I was a bit of a karaoke whore, like throughout my 20s and early 30s. Like my friends and I, we love it. And there are like great singers in LA and like, it's fun to go where like people are really great at it. But this place, Monday night was karaoke night, but people didn't show up for it. It was the same like 5 barflies who were there every night of their life.
Aww.
And it was their night to do karaoke. So one by one, I'd be in this huge venue for bands and I would call them in from the bar in the other room, be like, all right, it's such and such's turn. And then they'd come in and they'd,
Would they crush? Could they actually sing?
No, they were terrible. And they would sing their song and for no one,
Aw.
and except me standing on the side with the laptop, and then they'd go back into the bar. And I'm not very tech savvy at all. I'm like minimally just, barely layman experience. And so I didn't really know what I was doing with like setting the stuff up. I mean, I was doing it by rote from how my friend who ran it showed me how to do it. But anytime something went wrong and the sound system was like had a lot of issues, and anytime there was an issue, like I had to call him up and hope that he was free to come out and fix it. And the tips were like pretty lousy.
Well, because no one was there.
Right, no one was there. But it was a very bizarre type of spot. We had a guy who was hearing impaired, who was one of the 5 regulars.
And was able to sing and like knew.
Yeah, I mean,
wow,
singing quotes, but yeah,
sure.
it was great. Yeah, he always did the same songs. He always did he liked to do a lot of raps.
Of
so
course,
he didn't
because
have to
patter.
worry. But he always used to do, oh God, what was it? He used to do, don't stand there but to move. Or I want to rock and roll all night and party every day.
It's so interesting that he would be able to get the pattern. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was quirky about that. So
quirky.
If there would have been more people, you would have enjoyed it more.
Yeah, that could have been a blast. That could have
Okay.
been a lot of fun.
How long did you do that job?
8 months.
Oof, you lasted a while.
And then I did the catering for like a couple years, and then the third one, the biggin. I worked at the Cheesecake Factory at the Grove for six glorious years.
People who do not live in LA don't realize that location, that's the busiest Cheesecake Factory I've ever been inside of.
It's the second busiest one there is. The busiest is apparently in Honolulu.
Okay.
And then the Grove is the second busiest.
I've never been able to go in there and not be put on a wait.
It's
Doesn't matter what time of
hour
it.
wait
Minimum.
on a Saturday night.
Yeah. And like I was there on a random Sunday, like middle of the day, like past brunch, still put on a wait.
And
like it's crazy.
They don't take reservations.
Nope.
Either.
You roll up and there's always a line. Okay, so Cheesecake Factory has come up on this podcast or on this show a lot.
Yeah.
Because the thing that I can't understand is you have a 47-page menu.
Mm-hmm.
So that means in the back at any given moment, the food is ready to be made for 6,000 different menu items.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You got to tell me how many cooks, how many prep people, like how does that work?
It's a pretty big kitchen, and then there are like different stations in the kitchen. So there's certain cooks that are just in the pasta area, certain cooks that are just in the pizza area and the oven area. So that's kind of how they do it. But a lot of the items look alike, and so it was a 2-week long training process.
That's it? That's shocking.
Yeah, and even in just that 2 weeks, I probably put on like 5 pounds because
you got to try everything.
Because at the end of each, several hours, they would bring out a dozen different items, so that by the end of the couple weeks, you've tried everything on the menu, pretty much.
What was that menu test like? Was that a nightmare?
It was pretty tough, and I think I I like my anxiety was really high when doing it, and it actually took me a couple tries to get certified. Because like the first part of the test is where like you're shadowing somebody else, and then you have to kind of do your own. Where they're with you so it's like you're doing it together, and then you have to do a shift on your own. And the first time I did it, I like just barely failed because you have to get a certain amount of points, and I came right underneath it. And I'm like, oh my God, am I going to actually not get this job? Because after, 2
17 years of training, like,
and, but then like the next time I did it, I got certified, but it took a while to get good at the job. It took a while to get that skill of like that sense of inner timing of putting things in the computer and knowing when they're going to come up.
Oh, you would have to do that kind of stuff too.
Yeah. Well, they have food runners whose sole job it is to bring the food to the tables, but the place is so busy that you also have to help run food, not your own, just like whenever things are ready. So there is no off time. You are constantly going. And as soon as you've so being able to balance all that you have to do and still be helpful enough to help run food, to help keep certain areas clean. I mean, I still get server nightmares probably once a week.
We talk about this all the time. There's no such thing as a server dream. Hi, Chris Plackett, I'm quoting you. There's only server nightmares.
Yeah.
You never have that one where you get a $500 tip.
Right.
And you can
that never
call
happens. No,
never.
Once a week I have, and it's the same nightmare where I still work for the company for some reason, and I get sent to another location because they're short for the night, which never happened.
It didn't.
No, but this is, so just in the dream, I go to another location. I have no idea how to use the computer program, the posi. I don't know like where to get anything. I don't know where my section is, the table numbers. And then, but what's great is that it's like there's certain clues when you learn about lucid dreaming that you're supposed to look for to make you realize that you're dreaming, and then you can do whatever you want. So at some point in the dream, when I'm starting to get 10 sat, and suddenly I go, oh, wait a minute, I don't work here anymore. And then, I give everyone the middle finger and fly out the window. And
do you really control your lucid dreaming? This is a whole different podcast, but do you really? That's amazing.
To a certain extent.
That's awesome.
I have a thing where if I realize too much that I'm lucidly dreaming, then I wake up.
Okay. Yeah. So you do that for 6 years. You must have been making a grip of money there for how busy it was. Was it turn and burn?
Yes, for how busy it was. The average tip was somewhat low because
that area,
they're very high on tourists. It's very, very touristy.
Yeah.
And there just aren't the same tipping standards in other areas of the country, let alone the world, where the tipping standard is 0. So we would have a lot of foreign customers that just wouldn't know, and they'd they'd be like, service was really wonderful, thank you, and leave absolutely nothing.
And you're like, great.
Of course, you get the occasional someone leaves you 0, but they write, but
excellent job.
Or they leave one of those cards that's like to say
Jesus loves you.
Yeah, Jesus loves you. And so you're welcome. I'm saving your soul today, which is so much better than
the $5 I should have given you.
Yeah. So let your landlord know that you can pay
with Jesus' hugs. That's great. Okay, so you train there forever. You start, but you're making money just because of the volume. Mm-hmm. Did you ever get was your best tip ever that you got at any of these jobs at the Cheesecake Factory? Like, did you have somebody throw down crazy? Because sometimes celebrities go to that location.
Yeah. You know what? I served David Spade a lot.
Did you? He's the sweetest.
He's a really sweet guy.
He's a nice dude.
Yeah. I served David Spade a lot, and so he would always leave really nice tip, and he would always get the same thing. He'd get the white chicken chili with a double helping of brown rice.
Aw, yeah. He's a healthy guy. Yeah. That's great. So you knew that there would be some. That's interesting that a location that busy would have regulars, because he must have been recognized.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. I mean, sometimes I guess they do that for that reason. But did you ever get a best tip ever there apart from David?
Best tip ever? Yeah. The occasional just bomb ass tip for like maybe $50 or $60 or something on a few $100s, and it would usually be a celebrity.
What was the best tip you've ever gotten in your life?
Probably something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe someone hooked me up with a $100 tip one time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the question I know I'm going to get asked if I don't ask you. So you became certified in bartending in one of the most competitive bartending markets in the world.
Yeah.
You got bumped up to be a bartender immediately, so you were getting experience. Why not try to bartend at Cheesecake or bartend at any of these places?
Oh, totally. Well, the why not at Cheesecake is because those bartending positions at Cheesecake are like really, really coveted. And so they only give those to servers who had been there for a long time and were like the top servers. Yeah, so that's mainly why. And I think So I didn't want to pursue that. Same reason why when I was working that casino job, towards the end of that job, they were offering me a route to become a supervisor, and I was just like, you know what, I don't want to get locked into this more so than I already am. Like, I'm trying to keep my head on my shoulders and remind myself
ain't it.
I'm doing this so that I don't have to do it someday.
Yes.
I don't want to make a career out of this.
I got asked to manage at the last place I worked, and I was like, no way. Because I watched it. The other two managers at the time were both, former actors. And I watched it crush their souls as they're, of course, everyone's kissing their ass because they're at a higher position at this place. But also, I watched it just crush them. And I looked at both of them and I was like, thank you so much. No way. Yeah. Okay, so you work at Cheesecake. What was a quirky thing? Like, say I'm on page 72 of the menu and I'm like, this is a random cheesecake
that
behind
would be pastas. Yeah, go on.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm kidding.
So I know, I got you. I would have run with it. So if I'm looking at like a random cheesecake and I'm like, the Snickers bar cheesecake, but I look to you and I'm like, are there any allergens in that? Would you have to be like, well, it's, it's a lactose base. It's got milk. It's got nuts. It's got nuts. Yeah. Like, would you have to know that for every single also type of cheesecake y'all carried?
For a lot of, well, yes, but if someone had an allergy, the safe thing to do would be to go back into the kitchen and talk to the chef along the line and say, and a lot of times they didn't know offhand either, because like there could be an ingredient in one of the 4 sauces that's in a dish. And so we'd have to look it up on a computer and see if it had gluten or whatever it was. So that was like the smart way to do it, instead of just saying to the guest, like I'd always say to the guest, I don't think there is that in that, but let me go check for you.
Which always makes, as someone who has allergies, that actually makes me feel better if the person's like, I'm not going to just say yes or no. I'm actually going to go check. Like, great. Okay, so you do that for 6 years. What was the last straw that got you out of working at the Cheesecake Factory?
So last straw that got me out of it was that over the last year plus working there, they renovated the restaurant and expanded it to include a balcony area that's connected to it, where you can actually look out into the movie theater that's next door to it.
Yeah.
And that balcony area used to be actually our break area. So now we didn't have a break area, and they opened up the restaurant to another 15 tables or so. But they didn't expand the number of servers, the number of bartenders.
Y'all just had to pick
the
up.
Kitchen. So now we had already been working at an impossibly busy rate, and this made it impossible. It made it, and I'll bet if you go on Yelp around this time and look afterward, you will see that there is a significant increase in negative reviews and service, a lot of which say, I can tell that it wasn't my server's fault, but they really are just understaffed here. And the quality of service went down. But you know what? Some big
corporate bigwig.
Some corporate bigwigs crunched some numbers and saw that even if the average customer was this much less happy,
they're still coming.
They still brought more customers in and made that much more money. And
wait, so they wouldn't have assigned those extra 12 tables to a server? They were just like, you guys go pick up outside?
Well, no, they would. So they would bring a couple, like I think 2 servers on to service this entire section, where they maybe should have had 3. But like I said, they didn't expand so the average wait times for food became really long. The times where like a whole table's food was ready except for one person, and then they have to deal with the awkwardness of like, well, do we start or do we wait for this one person? And then that one person's food doesn't get run until like
10 minutes later.
And so everyone else's food is dead. And one of our rules for running food was don't run food to a table unless the whole table's
ticket is
ready.
Yeah.
But a lot of times there would be one thing waiting, and the kitchen would be like, just
get it the fuck out the window. Yeah.
With faith that by the time we sat all that food, that it would be ready. And a lot of times it wasn't. So we had a lot of comps. That's the thing. So I'm sure we ended up giving up a lot of money in all the comps that we had to give out, but Cheesecake doesn't care about that, which reminds me of an amazing story. Do you want to hear this great story? So speaking of them just throwing out comps, one time I was working a shift and my manager came up to me and said, okay, in about a half hour, you're going to get a customer that is going to order 10 shrimp for $10. I'm like, we don't have 10 shrimp for $10. That's not a thing on our menu. He goes, I know. He goes, I'm going to show you how to ring it in. You're going to say yes. And I'll show you how to ring it in once he gets here. I'm like, what's it? He goes, I'll explain later. So this guy, he was there on a date, and he's like, and I would like your 10 shrimp for $10, please. And I was like, yes, sir, right away. And I put the order in. Manager showed me how. Afterward, I'm like, okay, dude, what's going on here? And he said, so here's the thing. This guy went to some Cheesecake Factory like a couple of years ago and ordered 10 shrimp for $10, and they gave it to him. They just acquiesced to this request, even though it doesn't exist. I go, okay. And he goes, anyway, a few months later, this guy went to another Cheesecake Factory, tried to order the same thing. They said to him, sorry, sir, we don't have that. He made a huge stink. He wrote to corporate, and so corporate wrote him back, apologized, and sent him a $50 gift card. Anyway, he did this again a few months later at some other cheesecake. Same thing happened. They rejected it. He got pissed. He wrote to them. They sent him an apology and another $50 gift card. So he goes, am I allowed to swear?
Absolutely.
So he's like, so every time this guy orders 10 shrimp for $10 and we don't give it to him, this asshole gets $50 from our company. So it's more cost efficient. And I said to my manager, I go, does it bother you that we work for a company that has no spine? And he's like, you know what, man? He goes, I honestly think that the way that they look at it is we're making a lot of money, so let's just not rock the boat. I'm like, all right, I get it. I feel a little bad that like I'm making it like all about cheesecake, because I have to imagine that like all the other, that like Chili's and Applebee's are all like this as well on Fridays. Like, well, I gotta think it is.
Yeah, and I mean, the reason I'm so focused on it is because I've brought up just from the kitchen's perspective, the sheer volume and how they don't like the turnover in that kitchen must be every other week. I mean, I can't imagine the pacing of that.
Yeah, so there was that, and so conditions were getting worse, and I kind of put it out there to a lot of the servers who, I mean, our other main job is complaining, right? And so I put it out there. I'm like, guys, I'm not saying we go on strike, but like,
this is crazy.
We need to band together. We need to talk about ideas. Let's do something. And there was like some interest. And so I reached out to a lot of the servers. I'm like, all right, we're going to get together at this place at this time and let's just talk about it. And then somehow like this got back to the managers of like, hey, we hear that there's like
a coup
happening. I'm like, that's not what's happening. We want to talk about that the conditions are getting impossible for us to do our job. And we just want to figure out some solutions. And so the managers were already getting kind of wary of me. I'm like, look, I'm not trying to Che Guevara this shit here. Like, I really want to be constructive and find some ideas. And then the day came where all the servers, we were all going to get together, and only one guy showed up. And it was at that day where I was like, oh, okay, no one actually
gives a shit
either. And this was also coming off the tail end of I also got mugged my third year at the job 2 days before Christmas, and the parking at the Grove it's pretty expensive.
Yeah,
and if you work there, they have a quote unquote employee rate of, I think at the time it was $14 a day, which like I know in LA, right? In LA, sure, whatever. Like you drop 20 at a parking garage, but it adds up, and for a lot of the employees that would have been like an hourly wage. So can you imagine just one of your hours is just for the privilege of parking there? So I used to park at the neighborhood that was just outside of the Grove, just north of Beverly.
Which is, it's not a bad area.
It's not a bad area, and so I would park there every day, and then I'd walk over, and then 2 nights before Christmas, and I had my biggest shift ever. I made like $280 or something like that. And I walked back to my car, and these 3 dudes jumped me and took my phone and took my wad of cash. And thank God they didn't take my backpack, because like I had all my stand-up material.
Oh, that's more valuable. That's true.
I was just like, please, that's it, guys. Yeah, they held me at knife point and kind of threw me around and whatever. I feel fortunate that I didn't get hurt or anything, but anyway, I had talked to I don't want to get him in trouble because I don't think this is his fault at all, but my general manager at the time about it. And I'm like, look, it's just too much for parking. Like, why are we paying? The people who work at the Apple store apparently don't pay for parking. So let's figure this out.
Because Apple is probably supplementing the payment.
And my general manager is like, he goes, you know what? He goes, I'm somewhat close with the guy who owns the Grove. His name is Rick Caruso. I know how apropos that we're talking about this. And he goes, I'm actually having lunch with him next week, and I'm going to talk to him about this and see what we can do. And a week later, he came back and he's like, sorry,
tough titties.
He goes, tough titties. Yeah. He said, it's like, it's not enough for this guy to make all the fucking money in the world.
Nope.
But he needs to take $14 from the employees that are helping the Grove run, which... Like this makes me a single issue voter, but for this reason alone is why I'm not going to vote for him.
There's a lot of people that aren't for very similar. I mean, like the unhoused crisis.
Because
anyway,
here's the crazy thing. I crunched the numbers and I realized that if I pay $14 a day for how many shifts I was working, I was still better off parking in the neighborhood across the street and getting mugged a few times a year.
Yep.
And I would still be saving money. And it was that day where I'm like, I got to get out of this place. And at that time, I had been married for a year and my wife and I were house shopping and we were looking at the valley. And I'm like, you know what? Once we find this house in the valley, I'm not going to want to make this drive every day back down into Hollywood. Yeah. So that was a good opportunity to do it.
Good.
So put in my 2 weeks.
You're like I am in the way that like you want to, you know, even though the Cheesecake Factory wasn't goals, you're like, but I'm going to go hard for this because this is the job I'm doing right now. So I'm trying to make conditions more tolerable. We are the people that suffer at these jobs because we're like, no, we can all do it together. And everyone else is like, yeah, fuck off. We don't care.
Yeah. Like look through history. Anyone who tries to like disrupt the system, like what happens to them.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
yes, I'm comparing myself to Jesus and Gandhi.
No question. And it's good. You should. Okay. I want to we're running out of time. So I just want to know, what was there an incident that ever made them ask to speak to your manager? So they escalated something that they weren't having handled by you?
No.
Wow.
But
okay.
There was I don't know why I'm thinking of this incident, but there was one time where I was serving a black couple and they were, it sounds like I'm about to say something racist. I'm totally not.
I know you're not.
Anyway, I wasn't able to help them right away and I was like totally in the weeds and they had said something to me like they were like, is there a reason why? Because they had observed incorrectly that I had served a table next to them, even though that table next to them had gotten sat after. This was not the case at all. But anyway, they were like, are we going to have a problem today? Is there like a certain issue here? And like, you know, like it like totally like ramped up all my white guilt. And I'm like, oh my God, no,
so
please.
Sorry, no.
I'm an ally. Yeah. Yeah. Just like kowtowing for apologizing for 400 years of slavery in that moment.
No
I'm
problem.
like, please.
You're a good Jew.
Yeah.
But that's what so you say to them, no, there's not a problem. I'm really sorry. Like, but how did that twist into positive? They were like, okay, cool. We're good.
I said to them, I'm like, I'm really sorry if it looked like that. I'm going to take care of you guys right away. You have to understand I'm like backed up right now with 3 tables and it's an issue. Honestly, I remember saying this now. God, I hadn't thought about this in a while, but the last year of my job, because of how we had expanded, I told people when they said, what do you do for work? I go, I'm a professional apologizer. Ooh, because most of my tables, something would go wrong because of the situation. Volume. And I was just apologizing nonstop. I'd apologize when people first would sit down. I go, just heads up.
I'm sorry.
We're really backed up right now. I'm going to do my absolute best, but our kitchen's kind of slammed right now. So things will take a little longer than they should.
And when you care, that's brutal.
Yeah.
It's brutal. I hated that working at a comedy club where people would be like, we've been waiting forever. And in my head, I'm like, yeah, you have. I know you have. Yeah. And I can't do this any faster than I'm doing it. Oh, it's brutal. Okay. Last question in this section. Well, 2 questions in this section. Do you tip?
Yeah.
What's your average?
Of course. Average, I usually do 20% of the post-tax amount.
Okay. And can people earn less because they were shitty to you, or do you mostly just keep it?
So one of the great lessons that I learned in waiting tables is that in the vast majority is that when something goes wrong, it's really, really hard to know whether or not it was the server or if it was something else going on at the restaurant. Yeah. And so I think in the very few times that I have left less than that as a tip are very specific things where I knew for certain
it was the server,
that it was something that the server had done. But there have been a lot of those experiences, and in the majority of those experiences, I'm like, but like, I don't know what's going on with them. Like they could just be having a bad day and this and that. So it would have to be something that was like so egregious that I'm like, you know what? I don't care if you're having a bad day. You didn't have to be like an asshole like
That's
this
right.
and this and that. But I won't like stiff. It's like I'll do like 15% instead.
I love how all servers who I have on the show are like, all of us consider 15% stiffing you.
Yeah,
like if we're giving you that, it's basically we gave you nothing. Okay. Yeah. And then last question in this section, can you describe either the worst customer interaction you've had or top to bottom who the archetype of the worst would be? He's shaking his head.
It's a 1,000-way tie for worst customer.
Right?
It really is. We had one guy who he was a sweet guy, but he would show up and he would sit there for hours and hours and only order. He had like some super OCD ways of ordering his food. He would get like the Southwest egg rolls, but he had to have them super well done, and he had to have the sauces that came with them set up on the plate in a certain way.
Oh, wow.
He always got he would get an iced tea, a passion fruit iced tea, no ice, filled to the top, a second one halfway filled, and then 2 separate glasses of ice. He had like a lot of things like that, and he would sit there for 3 or 4 hours. So that's,
would he tip?
Yeah, he would. I mean, he'd tip like a couple bucks on his $17 tab.
But that's not proportionate to the amount of time he was seated there.
So when you see this guy sit in your section, you go, oh, there goes 25% of the money that I was going to make today. Because we would usually have like a 4-table section.
Yeah, and a 4-hour shift. Yeah. Oh, God, that's brutal.
I had a group of 15 people show up on New Year's Eve the second year I was there, which is why I decided after that night I would never work on New Year's Eve again if I could help it. There was a champagne, like a free champagne toast that we would do at midnight.
Which are fucking brutal. I wish everybody knew how brutal those actually are.
And so they showed up at like 8 or 8:30 and they just camped there until midnight to get their free champagne. I think they got maybe 2 pieces of cheesecake and they probably got about 10 hot tea setups, which are a real pain in the ass to do.
Tea's brutal.
Especially when you're really busy.
In the weeds, yep.
And so but because it was a party of 15, it was essentially my whole section. Oh. So I wasn't busy all night. I had nothing to do, but that was my entire night was 10 hot tea setups and a couple of pieces of cheesecake.
So would you make like $5 off the table or something?
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, it's so brutal. Y'all, don't park. Don't park. It's not like...
I got completely stiffed one time on a $450 tab.
No, you didn't. Why couldn't you grat that?
From a party of 14. Oh man, gratting was like that was a whole other nightmare with our company where we tried to push to have the auto grat got taken off at some point. There was a law that got passed like halfway in my time there that deemed it unlawful to auto grat, and so it got taken off and then like we had to fight for a long time to just have the suggestion printed off, that says this is what 18% is. This is what
20, yeah.
That was, oh God, it's like you're taking me back now. I'm getting major PTSD with like the battles that we fought to just have that put on.
Wait, so they stiffed you on $450?
Yeah.
So what were they rude? Were they foreign? Was there some reason? No.
Don't make me.
Oh yeah, don't say it. Okay,
don't make
fine.
me say it.
Okay. That sucks.
Yeah.
That sucks a lot. So you couldn't auto grad them, and so they walk out. And so did you tip out based off of sales or based off of tips?
Sales. Yeah.
So you lost money on that table.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I had a few dine and dashes in my day.
People think that's so cute, and it is so not cute.
I had these 2 teenage girls one time dine and dash, and what was so crazy is this was in my first year there, and I was so naive that I went to go box their leftovers up, and they were and they were like walking out, and I come out with their leftovers, and they were going down the stairs, and I wanted to be like good Samaritan hero of the day, so I chased them out of the restaurant to give them their leftovers, and they looked like totally
scared.
like the cat that caught the bird,
the canary. Yeah.
And they're like, oh, thanks. I'm like, yeah, you almost forgot your leftovers. Got back to the table and saw, of course, that there was no cash or anything in the...
Wow. Would you guys be responsible? Was there policy that you had to cover the tab?
No, we didn't, but we did get written up for it.
That's so fucking shitty because you're not a security guard. You're a server.
And the couple times that it happened, the managers that sat me down and had to like talk to me about it, like they felt bad about it. Like they
like,
really
this policy
they
sucks.
really phoned it in. They're like, you realize this and that, and you understand we have to write you up. I'm like, yeah, just fucking do it. Just do it.
Ugh. Okay. Well, because we're running out of time, I just want to, we're going on to the good stuff. We hope you saved room for dessert. We're going to only ask 2 questions in this. So what's the best lesson you have personally learned from working in customer service?
Man. The 2 lessons, the one is about that I had mentioned about tipping, that like you just don't know if it's the server's fault or not, and also that other people rely on those tips.
That's right.
Like the bussers, the bartenders, the food runners, they all rely on it. So like if you're gonna not tip, you're kind of taking away from all of that. And the other lesson, which is like really kind of sad, is like in general, it really lowered my opinion of humanity.
You're not the only one, my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sucks. Okay. And what's one piece of advice you would give to customers who interact with customer service workers?
Please give the benefit of the doubt.
I love that. No one's ever said that before. I love that. Okay. Well, Seth, how can people get in touch with you? Where are you touring next? Do you want to give out your socials?
I'll give out my socials. Currently in the process of booking some new dates. So please follow me on the socials and I'll post about all of it. So on Twitter, I'm at Seth Shapiro. And on Instagram, I'm at the Seth Shapiro.
Oh, I'm BK Gaffney. That's funny. Right. Yeah. If someone steals your name, it's a little hack.
I'm going to have to just throw a V on there.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Well, folks, we're going to drop your text now. If you want to help us out here at Service from Hell, we'd love to have you subscribe, rate, and or review the show wherever you're listening. It will help us reach more people that need to be schooled on the art of being kind. It will be catharsis for those of us still working in the industry. If you want to get in touch with us here directly at Service from Hell, send us your receipts to servicefromhellpodcast@gmail.com. Remember, if you can't afford a tip, you can't afford to go out. So don't be garbage and be good to people. It's easier that way. Seth, thank you for your time. I know you're a busy human, new dad, running around, also being a comic. So really glad that you were here. Thanks for all your sharing. And I'm certain I'm going to get emails about more cheesecake stories. So we may have to bring you back. But thank you folks so much for listening. Good night.